The Empty Storehouse. Introduction. In the village of Kolonko, the air smelled of millet, dust, and the sharp weight of unspoken things. Every year, when the rains came late or the harvests came thin, the government sent sacks of grain, white, heavy, stamped with bold letters and good intentions. And every year, those sacks passed through the village storehouse, locked under the chief's authority. The elders said, "That food is for all." The people believed, "It will feed us when the sun forgets." But when the sun did forget, when stomachs growled and smoke rose from empty pots, the storehouse gave nothing. Its door remained closed. Its locks remained strong. And the people grew silent, not because they agreed, but because they were afraid. All except one. A boy named Osman, who had no title, no power, and no audience. Only a sharp mind, an old notebook, and a question that wouldn't leave him. If the food was meant for all, why do only the few eat? And so began the quiet cracking of a very heavy door. Chapter 1. The Lock That Doesn't Open. The dry season had arrived early in Kolonko. The sky turned white with heat by mid-morning. Dust rose with every footstep, and even the goats walked slower, their ribs whispering louder than their hooves. In the courtyards, pots simmered with less, water, onion skins, a few scraped grains. The laughter of children had thinned like the soup. And still, the storehouse stood untouched. A long brown building with thick mud walls and a silver padlock so polished, it seemed to mock the sun. Osman, barely 17, watched it every morning. He was not a loud boy, but he had questions. And when Osman had a question, it did not leave him alone. That week, his mother had boiled wild leaves 3 days in a row. "We'll manage," she said. "At least we have the leaves." But Osman saw her eyes when she fed his little brother. The way she waited until everyone ate, and then quietly drank only water. He saw it, and he remembered something the village teacher once told him. Truth does not knock. It waits, and watches who opens the door. So one morning, Osman walked to the storehouse. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to see. And he noticed something strange. 2 fresh footprints. A small grain trail near the door. And a single torn sack, caught behind a barrel. Someone had opened it. Recently. Quietly. He went home and opened his notebook. He wrote 3 lines. "The storehouse is not empty, but the bowls are. So where is the food going?" Later that day, he asked his uncle, who once worked for the village chief, "When will the food be shared?" His uncle's eyes flicked left, then down. "When the chief decides. It is not for us to ask." "But what if the chief decides too late?" His uncle sighed. "Then you learn to eat silence." But Osman wasn't hungry for silence. He was hungry for the truth. And the next morning, he returned to the storehouse. With a pencil. And a plan. Chapter 2. The Grain That Walks at Night. Osman rose before the roosters that day. The morning air was cooler, thick with the scent of dew and dry grass. Far in the distance, a donkey brayed, and the faint clang of a cooking pot echoed from a neighbor's yard. He carried his notebook and a small piece of charcoal. No loud plans. No rebellion. Just questions. He returned to the storehouse, but this time, he walked behind it. And there, he found more signs. Scattered grain leading into the bush. A broken sack tied loosely. A set of footprints, 2 adult pairs, 1 smaller, all heading away, not toward the village. Osman followed quietly. Past the thorn tree. Past the old well. Until he reached a small clearing behind the chief's abandoned cattle pen. And there, hidden beneath a pile of dry grass, he found them. 5 full sacks. White. Government stamped. Unopened. And beside them, a torn list, names of beneficiaries scribbled in a rush. Some real. Some crossed out. Some that didn't exist at all. That night, Osman didn't sleep. He sat beside his mother, pretending to listen to her prayers. But his thoughts circled. So they took it. Hid it. Sold it maybe. Ate quietly while we boiled leaves. He knew if he shouted, he'd be shut down. If he blamed, they'd say he was disrespecting elders. So instead, he began to write. Over the next 3 days, Osman turned into a shadow. He spoke little, but watched closely. A large sack delivered quietly to the chief's brother's home. 2 men carrying maize late in the evening, saying it was for repairs. A new bicycle leaning against the grain officer's compound. Everywhere he looked, he saw the same thing. The storehouse was not empty. Only the bowls were. So he began recording. In his notebook, names, times, amounts, and destinations. Not to accuse, but to preserve. Because as the teacher once told him, when memory becomes writing, lies become nervous. Chapter 3. The Notebook and the Drum. By the end of the week, whispers began to stir in Kolonko. Not loud, not certain, just quiet things passed between firewood piles and behind water pots. Osman has been watching. He knows something. He writes like someone who doesn't fear doors. And then, the wrong eyes saw the right notebook. It happened just before sunset. Osman had stepped away from the well, leaving his small brown notebook tucked inside the folds of his satchel. A curious cousin, perhaps, or a helper boy from the chief's yard. Someone found it. And by nightfall, it had reached the chief's compound. The next morning, the village drum was beaten. Once, twice, 3 slow strikes, the call for public assembly. People gathered under the neem trees. The wind was dry. The sky, heavy with dust. Even the birds kept quiet that morning. The chief stepped forward, flanked by 2 aides, one a cousin, the other the man who kept the storehouse keys. He held the notebook in his hand. There are dangerous ideas spreading, he began. Some say the storehouse was misused. Some write lies in the name of truth. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned. We have among us a boy who writes with charcoal what he does not understand. He paused. Then, Osman, son of Fadi, come forward. The crowd parted. Some looked away. Others watched with wide eyes. Osman stepped out, slowly. Not afraid, but not proud. He stopped a few feet from the chief. Did you write these things? The chief asked. Osman nodded. I did. I saw them. And what do you hope to achieve by this? Osman looked past the chief, at the faces. Tired mothers. Skinny children. Quiet fathers. Then he said, I only wrote what I saw. I didn't know the truth would sting. The chief's hand tightened on the notebook. You accuse your elders? Your leaders? Osman shook his head. No. I recorded what the bags did. The silence was thick. The village waited. Then an old woman's voice broke through the crowd. Let the boy speak again. And another. Let's count the storehouse now. And another. Let the notebook be read aloud. The chief stepped back. Eyes narrowed. But the ground had shifted. That evening, the notebook was passed around like a newborn. And something rare happened in Kolonko. People began to ask out loud. Chapter 4. The storehouse opens. The next morning, the padlock turned. It wasn't the chief who opened it. It was Baba Jatta, the oldest and most respected elder in Kolonko. Too old to fear anyone. Too wise to ignore the hunger of children. He arrived with 2 others before the sun had cleared the trees. We built this storehouse with our hands, Baba Jatta said. We have the right to see what sleeps inside it. The villagers gathered slowly. Mothers with children wrapped to their backs. Farmers with cracked feet. Even the quiet ones came. The key was taken from the grain officer's home, not by force, but by shame. He handed it over without speaking, his eyes on the ground. And when the door opened, so did the lie. Inside, 21 full sacks. For empty ones, chewed by rats, proof, the chief had once said, that the grain had spoiled. Several tins of oil marked for drought relief, still unopened. A wooden chest filled with names, real and false, many of them matching Osman's notebook. The villagers stood in silence. One woman wept. A man removed his hat. A boy whispered, We were not crazy. The pots were really empty. The chief did not appear that day, nor the next. But the council of elders met under the big neem tree. And Baba Jatta spoke clearly. This village will not be fed by silence anymore. A community plan was formed. The sacks were divided fairly, starting with the hungriest homes. A grain committee was elected, and no member could be related to a chief or officer. The new rule was simple. What enters the storehouse must be counted, and what leaves must be known. As for Osman, he was not given a title. He was not made a leader. But his notebook was placed inside a wooden box at the village meeting hut. And beside it, a new one was started, blank, waiting. Each week, someone wrote in it. A number, a delivery, a name, a truth. Kolonko had learned. The door wasn't the problem. The silence was. Chapter 5. The notebook stays open. The rains came late that year, but they came. Crops grew slower than usual. The river thinned. But the pots in Kolonko stayed warm. Because now, when food arrived, it was counted. When sacks were lifted, names were recorded. And when someone asked, where did it go? There was always an answer. The storehouse no longer held just grain. It held trust. Osman returned to his quiet ways. He helped his mother dig the garden. Taught his brother how to trap birds without hurting them. Walked past the storehouse often, not to check, but to smile. He never once asked for thanks. But the people remembered. They remembered the boy with the notebook. The one who never shouted. The one who followed footprints, until they led to truth. Years passed. Osman grew. Left Kolonko for study in a nearby town. Became a school teacher. Sent money home quietly. And books, lots of books. One day, a visitor came to the school. A boy from Kolonko, face dusty, eyes bright. He said, they still use your notebook method. They call it the truth log. Every village nearby is doing it now. Osman smiled. And said nothing. Because the best kind of fire is the one that lights other fires. Not with noise, but with warmth. Back in Kolonko, the storehouse door still creaked a little when opened. But it no longer frightened anyone. Because now, every child knew. What feeds the village must be seen by the village. The end. Closing message to the listener. Thank you for listening to The Empty Storehouse. This was not just a story of hunger. It was a story of silence, and what happens when one person decides to speak. Osman didn't shout. He didn't fight. He simply wrote what he saw, and taught a village to open its eyes. May we all be brave enough to carry a notebook, and humble enough to tell the truth when it matters most. Dedication. The book is dedicated to those who lead with honesty and fairness. May you lead with the kind of truth that feeds both the stomach and the spirit.